I stood in my kitchen, hands trembling, staring at a leather-bound journal. My mother-in-law had just handed me with a satisfied smirk. The title, written in her perfect cursive, "What are reasons my son should divorce you?" But when I opened it and started reading out loud, her face went from triumphant to absolutely horrified, because these weren't the reasons she thought they were. If you love stories about entitled people getting exactly what they deserve, you're going to want to hit that like button right now and subscribe to True Revenge Tales, because this story has a twist you won't see coming. Trust me. My name is Rebecca, and for 5 years I thought I was losing my mind. Not in the dramatic, sudden way you see in movies. No, this was slow, insidious, like a fog creeping in so gradually that you don't realize you can't see clearly anymore until you're completely lost. It started the day Michael introduced me to his mother. Patricia Cunningham stood in the doorway of her pristine colonial home. Perfectly coiffed blonde hair, designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She looked me up and down in a single sweeping glance that somehow made me feel like I'd failed an exam I didn't know I was taking. "So you're Rebecca," she said, her voice honey-sweet with just the slightest edge underneath. "Michael has told me so much about you. Though I have to say I pictured someone different." "Different how?" I wanted to ask, but I just smiled and shook her hand, ignoring the way she held mine limply, like she was afraid my middle-class germs might be contagious. That was the first red flag. I didn't see it then. Over the next 5 years, those moments multiplied like bacteria in a petri dish. At our engagement party, Patricia gave a toast that sounded lovely on the surface but left me feeling hollow. To my son, who has always had such a generous heart, willing to see the best in everyone, no matter their background. At our wedding, she wore white. Not ivory, not cream, pure bridal white. When someone gently pointed out that it might be inappropriate, she laughed her tinkling laugh and said, "Oh, Rebecca won't mind. She's not traditional about these things." As if my lack of objection to her passive-aggressive power play was proof of my inferiority, not her rudeness. But it was the small daily interactions that truly eroded me. Every family dinner became a minefield. I'd bring homemade rolls and Patricia would smile. "How thoughtful. Store-bought dough can be tricky to work with." They weren't store-bought. I'd made them from scratch. But correcting her would make me look defensive. I'd mentioned being tired from a long shift at the hospital. I'm a pediatric nurse, working 12-hour shifts with critically ill children. And Patricia would pat Michael's hand sympathetically. "You look exhausted too, darling. I know how demanding some wives can be with their schedules." I'd wear jeans to a casual family barbecue, and she'd appear in a sundress and heels. "Oh, Rebecca, I forgot to mention we dress up for these things. But don't worry, you look comfortable." The worst part? She only did it when Michael wasn't paying attention. Or she'd do it so subtly with such plausible deniability that confronting her would make me look paranoid. When I tried to explain to Michael how his mother made me feel, he'd look confused. "Mom said that? Are you sure? That doesn't sound like her. Maybe you misunderstood her tone? She's just trying to help." That's how she shows love. And then I'd feel crazy, oversensitive. The problem. Year after year, the comments accumulated like paper cuts, individually survivable, but collectively bleeding me dry. Comments about my weight. "Second helpings, dear? Well, I suppose Michael likes a woman with an appetite." About my career. "Still working those long hours?" I gave up my career when I married. Family came first. About our childless state. "Tick-tock, Rebecca. Michael would make such a wonderful father, if he ever gets the chance." What she didn't know, what nobody knew except Michael and me, was that we'd been trying for 3 years, that I'd had 2 miscarriages that shattered me in ways I couldn't articulate, that every month that passed without a pregnancy felt like another failure, another piece of evidence that maybe Patricia was right about me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the day everything changed. It was 3 months before the dinner. Michael's birthday was approaching, and despite my offer to host a party at our house, Patricia insisted on throwing it at her home. "You're so busy with work, dear. Let me handle it. I know exactly what Michael likes." The implication being that I didn't. That 5 years of marriage hadn't taught me my own husband's preferences as well as his mother knew them. I arrived early to help with preparations, because refusing would have given her ammunition. Rebecca couldn't even be bothered to help with her own husband's birthday. Patricia was in the garden, terrorizing a catering staff who'd had the audacity to suggest a different placement for the appetizer table. I needed the bathroom. The main floor powder room was occupied, and I really needed to go. Patricia's house was massive, 5 bedrooms, 4.5 baths, so I headed upstairs to the guest bathroom. That's when I saw it. Patricia's bedroom door was ajar, just slightly. The afternoon sun streamed through her windows, illuminating her antique writing desk. And on that desk, bathed in golden light like some kind of damning evidence in a courtroom drama, sat a leather-bound journal. I should have walked past. I should have used the bathroom and gone back downstairs and continued being the punching bag I'd been for 5 years. But something made me stop. Maybe intuition, maybe desperation, maybe just 5 years of gaslighting, finally reaching a breaking point where I needed proof that I wasn't crazy, that the cruelty I felt was real. I stepped into her room. The journal lay open, and my name practically screamed from the page in Patricia's perfect, flowing cursive. Reason 23, Rebecca convinced Michael to skip my birthday brunch for her friend's wedding. She is systematically isolating him from his family. My heart stopped, then started again, pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I flipped back a page, then another, then another. Reason more 1, she doesn't come from the right kind of family. Michael deserves someone with proper breeding and social connections. Breeding, like I was a horse. Reason number 12, she works too much and neglects the home. The house is never properly maintained to the standards Michael grew up with. I worked 12-hour shifts saving children's lives. Our home was clean and comfortable. What she meant was, it wasn't her home, decorated her way, maintained to her obsessive standards. Reason they were 18, she has no sense of fashion or style. Michael deserves a wife who presents well in social situations. Reason 1, she has made no effort to lose the weight she gained since the wedding. Michael deserves a wife who takes pride in her appearance. I'd gained 15 pounds, 15. Most of it after the miscarriages, when grief and hormone treatments left me barely functional, let alone concerned about fitting into my wedding dress. Page after page after page. 47 reasons. 47 carefully documented, meticulously dated pieces of evidence that I was unworthy of her son. Some were petty criticisms of my appearance or housekeeping. Some were lies, accusing me of things I'd never done, motivations I'd never had. Some were deeply personal attacks on my family, my education, my worth as a human being. But the last entry, dated that very morning, made my blood run cold. Reason there 47. After 5 years, she still hasn't given Michael children. Perhaps she is infertile, or worse, selfish enough to deny him fatherhood. I have documented all the ways she has failed my son. It's time to show him this journal. It's time he knew the truth about the woman he married. It's time for Michael to divorce her and find someone worthy of our family name. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the journal. 5 years. She'd been documenting my failures for 5 years, creating a case against me like a prosecutor building evidence for trial, and she was planning to present it to Michael, to use it as proof that I should be removed from his life. I heard her voice downstairs, sharp and commanding. "Rebecca, where did you go, dear?" Panic flooded through me. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and started photographing pages. The camera clicked softly as I captured her poison, her vitriol, her carefully constructed case for my destruction. 1 page, 5 pages, 10 pages. My fingers flew across the screen, downloading the evidence of her hatred. "Rebecca?" Her voice was closer. She was coming upstairs. 20 pages, 30 pages, 47 reasons why I wasn't good enough, all captured in digital form. I snapped the last photo, closed the journal, positioned it exactly as I'd found it, and slipped out of her bedroom. My heart hammered as I ducked into the guest bathroom, locked the door, and flushed the toilet for authenticity. I stood there for a moment, gripping the marble sink, staring at my reflection in Patricia's gilt-framed mirror. My face was pale. My eyes were huge. I looked like I'd seen a ghost. In a way, I had. I'd seen the ghost of who I'd been becoming. The diminished, doubting, defeated version of myself that Patricia had been carefully crafting. I splashed cold water on my face, took 3 deep breaths, and opened the door. Patricia stood at the top of the stairs, her expression unreadable. "There you are. I was beginning to think you'd gotten lost. Had she seen me? Did she know?" "Sorry," I said, keeping my voice steady. The downstairs bathroom was busy. She studied me for a long moment, her eyes sharp and assessing. Then her face shifted back into its usual mask of polite civility. "Well, come along. The caterers are incompetent, and I need you to supervise the table settings, though I know proper entertaining isn't really your forte. There it was. The little knife slipped between my ribs so smoothly. I was supposed to pretend I didn't feel it bleeding. But this time, something was different. This time, instead of that familiar sting of shame and inadequacy, I felt something else entirely. Power. Because I had evidence. Proof. 47 documented reasons that proved. I wasn't crazy. Wasn't oversensitive. Wasn't imagining the cruelty. Patricia's own words in her own handwriting, revealing exactly who she was beneath the perfect facade. I followed her downstairs, my phone heavy in my pocket with the weight of truth. And as I helped arrange flowers and fold napkins and endured her endless criticisms, my mind was already working, planning, strategizing. Patricia thought she was 3 months away from destroying my marriage. She had no idea that she'd just given me exactly what I needed to destroy her instead. Over the next 3 months, I became the daughter-in-law Patricia always claimed to want. But this wasn't surrender. This was strategy. The morning after Michael's birthday party, I woke up with absolute clarity. I could have stormed over to Patricia's house, confronted her with screenshots of her poisonous journal, and demanded an apology. I could have shown Michael immediately and let him handle his mother. But I knew Patricia too well by now. She'd deny everything. She'd claim I'd misunderstood, taken things out of context, invaded her privacy. She'd paint herself as the victim and me as the unstable, paranoid wife who was trying to drive a wedge between a mother and her son. And worst of all, part of Michael might believe her, because he'd spent 33 years learning that his mother was always right, always proper, always beyond reproach. No, I needed something more. I needed witnesses. I needed a pattern so undeniable that even Patricia's silver tongue couldn't explain it away. So I began to play the long game. That Tuesday, I texted Patricia, "Would you like to have lunch this week? I've been thinking about what you said about proper entertaining, and I'd love to learn from you." The response came within minutes. "How wonderful, dear. I knew you'd come around eventually. Thursday at the country club?" And so it began. That first lunch, I brought a notebook. I asked Patricia about her childhood, her marriage, her philosophy on maintaining a proper home. I complimented her outfit, her taste, her wisdom. And Patricia, starved for the admiration she felt she deserved, opened up like a flower. "You see, Rebecca," she said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "most women today simply don't understand that being a wife is a full-time job in itself. Even if you insist on working," she said the word like it tasted bad, "you must never let your husband see the effort. The home should run like clockwork. He should never come home to clutter or chaos." I nodded, writing diligently, while my phone, positioned carefully beside my water glass, recorded every word. "And another thing," Patricia continued, warming to her subject, "a wife must always maintain her appearance. Men are visual creatures. It's not fair, perhaps, but it's reality. When you let yourself go, you're telling your husband he's not worth the effort." The barb about my weight was clear, but I just smiled. "You're so right, Patricia. I've been thinking about joining your gym." Her eyes lit up. "Really? Oh, Rebecca, I'm so pleased. I have the perfect trainer. Very strict, but that's what you need. Someone who won't let you make excuses." Over the following weeks, our Tuesday lunches became routine. I played my role perfectly, the humble student, eager to learn from the master. And Patricia, she revealed herself more and more. She told me about the proper way to dress. "Never pants to a family dinner, Rebecca. It's common. The right way to speak. Your laugh is rather loud, dear. Practice a more refined one. And the correct way to support a husband," Michael mentioned. "He's stressed at work. Perhaps if you were home more, creating a peaceful environment." Every slight, every criticism, every backhanded compliment was documented, not just in my recordings but in a beautiful leather journal I'd purchased, one that matched Patricia's exactly. I titled it Lessons from Patricia, a Documentation. But I wasn't just gathering evidence. I was studying her, understanding how she operated, learning the rules of her game so I could beat her at it. I noticed that Patricia needed an audience. Her cruelty was never quite as sharp when we were completely alone. It was when other people were around that she truly performed. She needed witnesses to her superiority, to her son's devotion, to her rightness. I also noticed that she couldn't help herself. Even when I was being the perfect, submissive daughter-in-law, she still had to make little cuts. It was compulsive. She literally couldn't see me succeed without diminishing it somehow. When I wore a dress, she'd suggested, "Much better, dear, though the color isn't quite right for your complexion." when I cooked one of her recipes perfectly. Not bad. Of course, you use store-bought stock. I make my own, but this is a good start. When Michael complimented me in front of her. Michael has always been generous with praise. Even as a boy, he'd compliment my attempts before I'd perfected something. Every single time, and I documented it all. But documentation wasn't enough. I needed allies. People who'd seen Patricia's true nature and would stand with me when the time came. I started with Lauren, Michael's younger sister. I'd always liked Lauren. But Patricia had created such a competitive atmosphere between us, constantly comparing, playing us against each other, that we'd never been close. But during one family dinner at our house, I watched Patricia criticize everything about Lauren's life in the span of 20 minutes, her recent divorce. If you just tried harder to understand David's needs, her career as a high school art teacher. Such a shame you never pursued something more substantial. Her parenting. The children seem undisciplined, Lauren. Perhaps more structure at home? I saw Lauren's face, that careful blankness that comes from years of absorbing, hits you can't acknowledge, and I recognized it because I'd worn it myself for 5 years. After dinner, I caught Lauren alone in the kitchen. She's wrong, you know, I said quietly. About all of it. You're an amazing teacher. Your kids are wonderful. And your divorce wasn't your failure. It was your freedom. Lauren's eyes welled up. She's been like this my whole life. I thought maybe it was just me, that I really was the disappointment she says I am. It's not you, I said firmly. It's her. It's always been her. That's when I showed her the journal. Lauren's hands shook as she scrolled through the photos on my phone. 47 reasons, she whispered. She made a list, an actual numbered list of why you're not good enough. Do you think you're the only one she's made lists about? I asked gently. Lauren's face crumpled. Oh God, you don't think... I think your mother is very good at documentation, I said. And I think she's been doing it for a very long time. We talked for over an hour that night. Lauren told me about growing up under Patricia's impossible standards, about the constant criticism disguised as helping her reach her potential, about the way Patricia had undermined her confidence so thoroughly that Lauren had spent years in therapy trying to rebuild it. What are you going to do? Lauren asked finally. About the journal? I'm still planning, I admitted. But when I make my move, I'm going to need people who understand what Patricia really is. People who won't let her rewrite history or play the victim. Lauren's jaw set with a determination I'd never seen before. I'm in. Whatever you need. Next, I approached Michael's Aunt Carol, Patricia's sister-in-law. Carol had always been kind to me, with a warmth that seemed genuine. Over coffee one afternoon, I carefully steered the conversation toward family dynamics. Can I ask you something, Carol? Has Patricia always been exacting? Carol's laugh was sad. That's a diplomatic word for it. Yes, dear. Patricia has always needed to be right, to be in control. My brother, Michael's father, he bore the brunt of it for 40 years. What do you mean? I asked, though I suspected I knew. Carol hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Patricia kept lists, detailed accounts of every way my brother failed to meet her standards. She'd present them to him periodically, as evidence that he needed to improve. He'd change everything about himself, his job, his hobbies, his friends, trying to please her. But there was always a new list, new standards, new ways he was falling short. My blood ran cold. What happened to him? He had a heart attack at 58, Carol said quietly. The stress, the constant pressure. The doctors said his cortisol levels were through the roof. He'd been living in a state of chronic stress for decades. I'm so sorry, I whispered. The worst part? Carol's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Even at his funeral, Patricia managed to make it about how his death had inconvenienced her, how she now had to manage everything alone. She showed no grief, Rebecca, only annoyance. Carol reached across the table and gripped my hand. I've watched her start to do the same thing to Michael. And to you. When you married him, I hoped you'd be strong enough to stand up to her. Are you? I met her eyes. I'm about to be. I showed her the journal, too. Carol wasn't surprised, just deeply sad. This is who she is, Carol said, and she'll never change. The only question is whether you'll let her destroy your marriage the way she destroyed my brother's spirit. Not a chance, I said firmly. With Lauren and Carol on my side, I had witnesses to Patricia's pattern of behavior, but I needed one more thing. I needed Patricia to feel comfortable enough to make her final move. So I doubled down on playing the perfect daughter-in-law. I started dressing almost exclusively in the conservative style Patricia approved of. I asked her advice on everything from curtain colors to career decisions. I even started going to her gym, working with her trainer, making a visible effort to lose weight. And Patricia? She was thriving. Michael, I have to say, I'm so pleased with Rebecca's progress. I overheard her tell him one evening. She's really maturing under my guidance, becoming the woman you deserve. Michael, bless him, looked confused. Mom, Rebecca has always been exactly who I need. Patricia's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course, dear. I just meant she's refining herself, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was preparing for something. 3 months to the day after I'd found her journal, Patricia called me. Rebecca, dear, I think it's time we had a family dinner. A real celebration of how far you've come. Let's do it at your house. I want to see how well you've implemented everything I've taught you. My heart raced. This was it. The moment she'd planned to present her journal, to show Michael all 47 reasons I was unworthy. That sounds perfect, Patricia, I said warmly. I'll organize everything. Wonderful, she purred. I'll bring a special contribution to the evening. Something I think everyone should see. I smiled into the phone. I'm counting on it. The morning of the dinner, I woke up at dawn with my heart pounding. This was it. The culmination of 3 months of careful planning, of biting my tongue, of playing a role so convincing that sometimes I almost forgot it was an act. Today, Patricia would walk into my home expecting triumph, expecting to finally destroy me in front of the family she'd spent years manipulating. Instead, she was about to face herself. I spent the morning cooking Patricia's own recipes, the ones she'd so graciously shared during our Tuesday lunches, always with a subtle reminder that I'd probably mess them up. Her famous coq au vin, which she'd made me practice 3 times before declaring it acceptable, though not quite as good as mine. Dear, her signature chocolate soufflé, which she'd warned was very difficult for amateur cooks. Her mother's dinner rolls, which she'd said required a delicate touch you might not have developed yet. Every dish was perfect. I'd made sure of it. Michael found me in the kitchen around noon, surrounded by ingredients and recipe cards. Hey, he said softly, wrapping his arms around me from behind. You've been cooking since 6 a.m. What's going on? I leaned back into his embrace, savoring it. After tonight, everything would change. For better or worse, the careful peace we'd maintained with his mother would shatter. I just want everything to be perfect, I said, which was true. Your mom has taught me so much. I want to honor that. Michael kissed the top of my head. You know you don't have to prove anything to her, right? You're already perfect to me. My eyes burned with sudden tears. God, I love this man. This kind, genuine man who'd been so conditioned to excuse his mother's behavior that he couldn't even see the damage she'd done. I know, I whispered. I love you. I love you too, he said. Need help with anything? Actually, yes. Can you set the table? Use the wedding china. The same china Patricia had given us with the comment, since you don't come from a family with proper heirlooms, I thought you'd need a good set. By 6 o'clock, everything was ready. The dining room looked like something from a magazine. Candles, flowers, the table set with geometric precision. I'd even worn the pearl necklace Patricia had given me for our first anniversary, the one that came with the story about how they were real pearls, quite valuable, not costume jewelry like some people wear. I'd dressed carefully, too, in a navy dress Patricia had once complimented as finally appropriate. My hair was styled, the way she'd suggested. Even my makeup was subtle, refined, exactly as she'd instructed. I looked like Patricia's creation, her success story. That was the point. Lauren arrived first, her eyes meeting mine with understanding and solidarity. She squeezed my hand. Ready? Ready, I confirmed. Aunt Carol came next, giving me a long hug. You're doing the right thing, she whispered. For yourself, for Michael, for all of us. Michael's brother David and his wife Sarah arrived, followed by a few close family friends, people who'd known Patricia for decades, who'd seen glimpses of her true nature, but never the full picture. And then, at precisely 7 o'clock, fashionably late as always, Patricia arrived. She made an entrance, as she always did. Perfectly coiffed hair, designer dress, that smile that looked warm to anyone who didn't know better, and clutched in her hands like a trophy, the leather-bound journal. My heart rate spiked, but I kept my face serene. "Rebecca, darling," she air-kissed both my cheeks. A gesture she'd only adopted after I started playing the dutiful daughter-in-law. "What a lovely evening you've planned. And you're wearing the pearls. How appropriate." "Of course," I said warmly. "You have such wonderful taste." Her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "I've brought something special to share with everyone tonight. Something important." "How thoughtful," I said, gesturing to the living room. "But first, let's have drinks. I made your favorite martini." Dinner was a performance. I played the perfect hostess, making sure glasses stayed full, engaging everyone in conversation, deferring to Patricia on matters of taste and etiquette. Patricia held court, telling stories that subtly positioned her as the sophisticated matriarch and me as her grateful protege. "Rebecca has come so far," she told the table, her hand resting possessively on the journal beside her plate. "When she first married Michael, well, let's just say there was work to be done. But I've been patient, and I think we're finally seeing results." I saw Michael's jaw tighten slightly, but he said nothing. He'd been trained his whole life not to contradict his mother in public. The food was flawless. Even Patricia couldn't find fault, though she tried. "Quite good, Rebecca. Almost as tender as when I make it." After dessert, the soufflé risen to absolute perfection, I stood and tapped my wine glass with a spoon. The room fell silent. "Everyone, thank you so much for coming tonight," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "This dinner is very special to me because I want to honor someone who has been incredibly influential in my life over the past 5 years." Patricia sat straighter, her hand moving to rest on the journal. Her moment was coming. "Patricia," I turned to face her directly, "you have taught me so much about family dynamics, about maintaining appearances, about the importance of documentation and keeping careful records." Her smile was radiant. She thought I was about to thank her, to acknowledge her superiority in front of everyone. "In fact," I continued, moving to the sideboard where I'd hidden my own preparations, "you've inspired me to become quite the documentarian myself." I pulled out a beautifully bound book, identical in style to Patricia's journal, right down to the leather binding and gold embossing. But mine was thicker, much thicker. "I wanted to present you with this," I said, placing it on the table in front of her. "A complete record of our relationship over the past 3 months. Every lunch, every conversation, every piece of advice you've given me. I documented it all exactly as you taught me to do." Patricia's smile flickered. "What?" I opened the book. Inside were printed transcripts of our conversations, annotated with dates and times, screenshots of text messages where she'd made subtle digs, photos I'd secretly taken showing her eye rolls when she thought I wasn't looking, her dismissive gestures, the way her face would shift from sweet to contemptuous when Michael left the room. "You see, I learned something important from you, Patricia. You taught me that documentation is power, that keeping records matters, that the truth is what you can prove." I began passing copies around the table. Michael took one, his brow furrowed in confusion. Patricia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This is a violation of privacy. You recorded me without consent." "Actually," I said calmly, "in this state, only one party needs to consent to recording. And I consented. Just like you didn't need my consent to write this." I reached across the table and took the journal from beside her plate. Patricia lunged for it, but I'd already stepped back. "Should I read from it?" I asked the room. "Or shall I just pass it around?" "Give that back." Patricia's voice had lost all its cultured refinement. "You went through my private things. This is theft." "I found it," I corrected. 3 months ago, lying open on your desk. And what I found? Well, I think everyone should see it. I opened to the title page and read aloud. 47 Reasons My Son Should Divorce You, by Patricia Cunningham. The room erupted. Michael stood so fast his chair fell backward. "What?" "It's not what it sounds like," Patricia said quickly, her composure cracking. I was trying to help Michael see." "See what, Mom?" Michael's voice was dangerously quiet. He'd crossed the room and taken the journal from my hands. "What were you trying to help me see?" I watched as he began to read, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, anger, and heartbreak. "Reason number 1, he read aloud, his voice shaking. "She doesn't come from the right kind of family. Michael deserves someone with proper breeding and social connections." He looked up at his mother. "Breeding? She's a person, not a dog." "Michael, if you'd just let me explain." "Reason number 12, he continued, flipping pages. She works too much and neglects the home. The house is never properly maintained to the standards Michael grew up with. She's a pediatric nurse, Mom. She works 12-hour shifts saving children's lives. Lauren had taken another copy and was reading through it, tears streaming down her face. Oh my God, Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I had no idea it was this bad. Aunt Carol was reading over Lauren's shoulder, her face pale. This is just like what she did to your father, she said to Michael. The lists, the impossible standards, the constant documentation of failures. That's different. Patricia snapped, her perfect facade completely shattered now. My husband needed guidance. He was weak. Michael deserves better than to repeat his father's mistakes. The room went dead silent. Michael's face had gone from red to white. Weak? Dad was weak? Oh, sweetheart. I shouldn't have said it like that. Patricia tried to backtrack, but it was too late. Aunt Carol stood, her voice shaking with decades of suppressed rage. Your father wasn't weak, Michael. He was beaten down. Day after day, year after year. Your mother criticized and documented and listed every way he failed to meet her. Impossible standards. He changed everything about himself trying to please her, and it was never enough. The stress literally killed him. That's not true! Patricia's voice was shrill now. He had a heart condition. It was genetic. Exacerbated by chronic stress, Carol shot back. The doctors said so, but you wouldn't listen then, and you won't listen now. Michael was still reading, his hands trembling. Reason 23, reason 31 about Rebecca's weight, reason 47. His voice broke. You wrote that she's selfish for not giving me children. Mom, we've had 2 miscarriages. Rebecca blames herself. She cries herself to sleep, and I hold her and tell her that we're enough, just us. I was crying now, the tears I'd held back for 3 months finally spilling over. I hadn't wanted to bring that pain into this, but it was the truth. And the truth was what tonight was about. Patricia had tears in her eyes too, but they were tears of rage, not remorse. I was trying to protect you. She's not good enough for you, Michael. I'm your mother. I know what's best. No, Michael said firmly. And I heard something new in his voice. Finality. You don't get to decide that. You never did. He crossed to me and took my hands. I am so sorry. I should have seen this. I should have protected you. You couldn't see what she didn't want you to see, I said softly. The words I'd been holding for 3 months. She's had a lifetime of practice hiding. Who she really is, Michael, turned back to his mother. You need to leave. Michael, I'm your mother. And she's my wife. His voice cracked with emotion. The woman I chose. The woman I love. The woman who's been having lunch with you every Tuesday for 3 months, taking your criticism and your backhanded compliments and your impossible advice, all while you were planning to humiliate her with this journal. He held up the leather-bound proof of Patricia's cruelty. Every single reason in here says more about you than it does about Rebecca. Your obsession with status, your impossible standards, your need to control everything and everyone around you. Patricia looked around the room desperately, seeking an ally. But Lauren was crying into Aunt Carol's shoulder. David was reading through the journal with disgust on his face. The family friends looked uncomfortable and embarrassed. You'll regret this, Patricia said, her voice icy as she grabbed her purse. All of you, when you come to your senses and realize I was right, don't expect me to forgive you easily. The only thing I regret, I said, finding my voice strong and clear, is not standing up to you 5 years ago. Not trusting myself when I knew something was wrong. Not protecting myself from someone who saw me as a project to fix rather than a person to love. Patricia's face contorted with fury and something else, fear. Because I think in that moment, she finally understood that she'd lost. I hope you find peace, Patricia, I continued. I really do, but you won't find it in my home, in my marriage, or in my life. Not like this. She left without another word. The door closing, behind her with a decisive click. That felt like the end of an era. That was 6 months ago. Patricia did try to come back into our lives, but only on her terms. She wanted us to apologize, to admit we'd humiliated her. We refused, so she chose absence. Though she tells everyone who'll listen that we're keeping her from her son. Most people who know us know the truth. And those who believe her version, well, they're welcome to her. Michael and I are in therapy, working through the ways Patricia's manipulation affected our relationship without us realizing it. It's hard work, but we're stronger for it. Lauren went no contact with Patricia entirely and says, She feels lighter than she has in years. She's thriving. And me? I learned something valuable from Patricia after all. Documentation matters. Truth matters. And standing up for yourself, even when it's terrifying, matters most of all. I still have the journal pages saved. Not as ammunition, but as a reminder. A reminder that someone else's list of reasons why you're not good enough says everything about them and nothing about you. Patricia thought she could destroy me with 47 reasons. Instead, she gave me one very good reason to find my voice, set my boundaries, and choose myself.